Today in the Upper Euro Rapid, we conclude the quarterfinal and determine which 4 players move on to the semis. Going into today, Magnus Carlsen up 1-0. We have Wesley So up 1-0. We have MVL up 1-0. And we have Anish Giri and RADJABOV deadlocked. So, I'm going to take you through every single match and the decisive games and moments, and we will finish with the epic clash between Magnus Carlsen and Daniel DUBOV. That's all I'm going to say right now. There are clips, there are going to be so many epic moments, but the other matchups were a little bit more relaxed. So, we're going to kick things off, and I'm going to show you this game between DUDA and Wesley. This was their first rapid game. Timestamps on the video player. Let's get into it. This is the English opening, and Black playing the move bishop to b4. And immediately going for kind of an instigation here in the center of the board with the move e4. After knight g5, the players get takes, takes, and rook e8. And here DUDA castles. In this position, it's significantly more common for white to play the move f3. Point being that if black were to take this, I just bring my knight back, and then I build up in the middle, maybe d3, maybe e4. I have my dark squared bishop. You don't have a dark squared bishop. I gotta find a way to activate it. And sometimes black actually plays e3, which is a really cool move. And if white takes, white has now damaged the structure beyond repair. Black rebuilds on the dark squares, tries to camp the knights out in the middle. But DUDA didn't play f3, he castled, and it kind of allowed Wesley to just get a very nice development. And then again, DUDA never broke with his pawns and just moved his knight around. Wesley just, developed his pieces naturally, and after takes, bishop e4, he played the move bishop h3. So the bishop is hanging, the rook is hanging, you can move the bishop and guard your rook. But DUDA did this, and just volunteered his rook for capture. And I guess DUDA's logic was, well, I'm gonna be, I'm gonna have the bishop for the rook with an extra pawn. I'm gonna play rook b1, I'm gonna go kind of over here, d3, e4, f4. Okay, let's see what happens. Wesley plays knight a5 so that he can kick out the bishop, and then he plays the move a6. Clearly, he's trying to get something going on the queen side. And DUDA stops that, but now look at that. Look at that sidestep, kind of trying to infiltrate. DUDA stops that too, but the knight gets in and takes the bishop. You're up material, what do? You simplify. And then you play b5 as planned. Now, DUDA explodes the position. Wesley allows himself to be forked because rook b8. And now this sidestep teams up with this. Look at Wesley's control of the board on all sides. We could all learn from how well he kind of sees everything, and he goes to this position and now has queen versus rook and bishop. In a situation you have queen versus rook and bishop, white needs a way, the guy with the rook and the bishop needs to coordinate his pieces in a way that the queen can't just go in and pick everybody off, because that's what the queen's gonna do. It isolates its target, and bam, it gets it. And that's exactly what it starts doing. It's like a a killer in the savannah, a lion just isolating the prey and plays. I mean, I hope that's like a correct statement of, I don't want National Geographic to strike down my video because I said a lion hunts down a... Anyway, king f8 and g6, queen b3, and usually the queen needs a friend. And in this case, it's going to be the pawn. The pawn is going to be that friend, and it's going to kind of be the determining factor in promotion. And what ends up happening is DUDA plays this to stop it, but queen e6 is just a fork. And he resigns. DUDA just resigns. Wesley takes a 1-0 lead, and I'm just going to skip right ahead to it. Wesley won the second game. It was such a beatdown, I'm not even going to show it because I might honestly get, demonetized for how violent and gross and gory that game was. So, Wesley wins 2-0, and, he won 2-0 today, and he's mathematically winning in this match because even if DUDA wins the next 2 rapid games, they tie. And because Wesley won yesterday's set, he already won. So Wesley's our first semifinalist. Now in the next matchup, we're looking at LEVON versus Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. This is their second rapid game. Going into this one, MVL has a 1-0 lead, and it's half-half. Right? They drew their first game. So this is their second rapid game. This one is a Sicilian, and obviously MVL plays the Najdorf. Very good. We get bishop c4. It's known as the Sozin attack. And now we get a3, f3, queen e2, and g4. This is very common, right? Because black castles, you kind of use this pawn as the springboard for your pieces. We get rook c8, g5, knight h5, rook g1. Guy is trying to come in here, open the side of the board, g6, long castle. Now, if I see long castle in a Sicilian, I'm thinking, when is MVL going to sacrifice his material? Because that's generally how Sicilians work. You kind of just wait for the moment there for the sacrifice on c3 to make something happen. Oh, it happens now. Levy, what a timely introduction of a concept. And then LEVON sacks back because he's trying to open up his king. And MVL doesn't even take. MVL doesn't even take. He starts activating his piece. Knight c4. Look at that. Bishop c4. bc4. But you thought, what about the rook? Yeah, but the bishop's coming out now. Rook b8. We're trying to mate the guy. Queen a3. Queen c3. Picking it all off. So we play king a2. MVL not interested in this pawn. He's interested in mate. All right? Guys only want one thing. Bishop c1. D takes. Explosion. Rook f1. Queen a5 back. Queen f3, rook f8 has to guard mate, and at this point, LEVON's starting to figure it out, but MVL throws another curveball, c3. If you take with the bishop, there's queen a3, that looks dangerous. Queen c3, on the other hand, might have tried to stabilize, but he plays knight b3 instead. Then he plays this, but now the queens are off. So now that the queens are off, no one's ever going to get mated. We start going to an endgame, the game heads to an endgame, MVL activates all of his pieces again. He cocooned to guard himself, but now he's activating his pieces, and LEVON blunders. He gets his rook stuck. He ends up sacrificing the rook for the bishop, and we get this, e5. And here we have bishop and 4 pawns versus bishop 4 pawns and rooks. But one guy's got a clump of pawns. They're together. Meanwhile, one guy's got just 4 isolated, sad, these guys are quarantining. And MVL plays a great move, f5. Playing on the coordination of the pawns. You cannot en passant. Well, you can en passant, but then bishop takes d6. And what happens? He brings his king. That's how endgames are played. Blocks the pawn from promoting, and we get a bishop, rook, and 4 endgame where one guy is going to walk these pawns down the board. Let's see how he does it. Coordinates his pieces beautifully. Rook, bishop, and king. And now g5, and he picks up the pawn. And now, no rook trade. The pawns are coming. King, look at this king walk. This king's walking all around the board. All right, now it's time for a bishop endgame. How are we going to win this? Like this. Pawns are stable. You can't go after this pawn because I promote. If you play h3, I got reinforcement. That's what I talked about, right? Bishop g3, and game ends. That's it. And you say, well, how did MVL make that look so easy? Because that's what Sicilian players do. Well, he's French. He's not Sicilian. He plays the Sicilian. So, makes it look very easy. He took a 1.5 half lead. LEVON actually struck back in the next game, but ultimately what happened? It was a draw in the final game of the Rapid today. So, it's MVL who moves on. He wins the Rapid portion. And LEVON has been eliminated. In fact, how about instead of scores, I just cross people out when they get eliminated. Bam. Look at that. Nice. Wesley So and MVL move on. They are not playing against each other. They are awaiting one of the other opponents. I'm going to give MVL the score here. Technically, his score is 1.5 because he drew the Rapid match today. So he wins 1.5. Now, this next game, I've only got one game to show you from the match between Timur RADJABOV and Anish Giri. Why? Because Timur RADJABOV and Anish Giri drew 5 straight games. They drew 4 Rapid games, so technically the Rapid portion of their match is now 1-1. They drew their first Blitz game in the playoffs against each other, so it's 0.5, 0.5. And I only have one Blitz game to show you, and it is this game, and that probably spoils that there's no Armageddon, but I don't give a damn. This is heartbreaking because they're both obviously part of the Wolf Pack. They stream together with Vidit, and yeah, so let's go. E4, and Timur RADJABOV plays D3. Do you know why he plays D3, ladies and gentlemen? Because he's a King's Indian expert, and he wants a King's Indian so bad, and he gets his King's Indian with the white pieces. Now, Anish begins instigating on the king side with f5, g5, and RADJABOV actually can sacrifice, already creating some headaches for Anish. But RADJABOV took his time. He decided not to do that. He decided to slowly prepare some kingside play. And here, look at this, same side pawn break. Anish plays bishop at f6, stabilizing the g5 square, except that's not a stabilization whatsoever. Bam, bam, chop on g5, bishop g5, and a check on h5, and Timur RADJABOV wins the dark squared bishop. At the same time, he gives away the pawn on d3, and we get a trade. So what is going on? We got 2 rooks, 2 bishops, 5 pawns, 2 rooks, bishop, knight, 5 pawns. Where are the pawn break opportunities? They're on this side. This is the key. I cannot stress enough how timely this move is, because what ends up happening, you isolate black's weakness. Now we get a3. Why do we get a3? He's not trying to give every single pawn a turn. He's not trying to show Anish he knows how pawns go. He's stopping knight coming to b4. Next, what does he do? Double stack. Stacks the rooks, and after rook f6, sometimes when there's a pinned rook on the other side that's not sufficiently protected. Bishop c5. You need a little extra spice in there. A little flavor, a little hot sauce. e4, rook d6. He gets all the pieces off the board. How are we going to win this game? We're up a pawn. Well, Anish, first, we're going to play the move f4. Anish now has a difficult decision. Does he take en passant, or does he allow two pawns to stay together? King come out. He chooses to take. At this point, Timur RADJABOV has like 20 seconds on the clock. Anish realizes he can't move this knight so easily because this pawn is a target. He can't move the pawn because the knight's a target. So he backs up, but that's it. And now watch. RADJABOV says, I am the king. Watch this iconic king walk down to the other side of the board. The king's like, alright, that guy doesn't want to come out. I'm going to get him with my bare fist. I don't know why he sounds like a 1960s mafia boss, but also the boss wouldn't do the fighting. He would get the other guys. Anyway, so bishop e6, he picks up the pawns, and it takes a little bit of time because obviously, you know, Anish is not convinced Timur knows how pawns move, and then he, you know, we get all this, we get a lot of pawn pushing. I mean, I don't have to explain this. You got two pawns, what are you going to do? You're going to push them. So he pushes the pawns, and it was in this position. Timur RADJABOV resigned, Anish Giri. Timur did not resign. It was Anish Giri resigning, the pawns are promoting, and perhaps the saddest moment of this entire recap, Anish Giri will not get a final Valentine's date with Magnus Carlsen as he has been eliminated. Timur RADJABOV moves on to face Wesley So in the semifinal. And sadly, we have to say goodbye now to Anish Giri, the fabled X mark. Now, ladies and gentlemen, if you made it this far so far in this recap, or if you just skipped ahead, it is time for the marquee matchup. It is time for Magnus Carlsen versus Daniil Dubov. This is the second game. The first game, they drew half-half. All right, Magnus Carlsen has the white pieces. Magnus Carlsen plays e4, e5, конь f3, конь c6, слон c4. Once again, not following the guidance of GothamChess, playing the fried liver. So we get d3, h6, and the players get out to this position in the opening. Daniil Dubov plays d6, and then Daniil Dubov goes, oh, Magnus is going backwards. He's trying to play f4. Let me explode the center with d5. We get ed5, knight a5, and a trade, and Magnus Carlsen uncorks. Bishop takes h6. Look at that move, huh? You talk about a nice move. How about that move? And in this position, the point is that if you take, there is this. But we get f5, hitting the knight, now c4. Now at this point, I'm going to start showing you some clips. First things first, at this point, for whatever reason, completely inexplicably, Magnus Carlsen was just doing this. He was just sitting there and biting his lip and that, and then laughing. He was just cracking up. Everyone was really confused. They're like, "What is he doing?" It was right in this moment, right in this position, biting his finger. I'm like, "What is going on? Did like Dubov have a Russian secret agent send this guy like some sort of, I don't know. I mean, truly, I have no idea. Of a cat video, I don't know." So what happens is the knights get traded, and then queen e2, rook f4. And he plays the move bishop to d2, hitting the rook. And clearly, Daniil Dubov has seen my danger levels video. If you haven't seen it, go look it up. Bishop g4, what's worth more than a rook? A queen. And all of a sudden, Magnus Carlsen has to sacrifice, because if he doesn't play f3, I play bishop f3, I play queen g2, I mate you. So he's down a pawn. Magnus trying to desperately stabilize his position, brings the rook. We get rook f6, d takes e4, queen h5. Dubov wants to come in somehow. Let's go. Rook e3. Bishop takes e4. The queen is hit. Where do you move it? 50-50 chance. We get queen to e2, and this is why you always look for checks. Rook takes g3, dynamite. If h takes g3, queen h1 is mate. If rook g3, queen e2. Stunning. If Magnus Carlsen had played the move queen e1, he stabilizes a little bit. Dubov would have had to work a little bit harder. And now, my friends, I have a clip for you of Magnus Carlsen's reaction to this blunder. And it was everything you might expect. It was, read his lips. Yeah, he was not very happy. He stared at the screen for a bit, and then he actually, some seconds later, looked around and turned off his camera. So I don't know what happened here, but most likely if there was some objects in the room, they were most likely picked up and they were not put down very nicely. So now we go to the next rapid game, and in this rapid game, right now it's a 1.5 lead for DUBOV, who just won kind of effortlessly with the black pieces. So we go to the next rapid game. Magnus has to come back. We have d4, knight f6, and a queen's Indian defense. So bishop b7, bishop g2, all the goodness, all the goodness and the kind of juicy stuff. And Magnus goes for this kind of position, which is it's weird. It's unique. It's I mean it's kind of flamboyant, but it gives DUBOV a really giant center. And oh man, that was an interesting way of calling him. And Magnus plays e5. So DUBOV here goes for the center and tries to play. Sorry, did I say DUBOV? I don't even know what I'm saying anymore. Magnus tries to kind of close up the center here, make DUBOV play d5 so that we get knight to c5 and a nice dark squared blockade. Now DUBOV is no slouch. He maintains the tension. Magnus jumps his queen out to f6. DUBOV plays knight e3, takes, and e5. Whoa. This is hanging. But after bishop b7, DUBOV probably calculated rook b8, bishop c6, and now the knight is hit. But rook a7. And at this point, we got this gem of a clip. We got this. Watch what Magnus does. It's like the cyborg rebooting or something. I mean, Magnus plays rook a7, and now the knight is guarded if this ever happens. And we got boom. Oh, let's go. The clip was called Magnus Reboots. The robot has officially rebooted. So now we get queen g4 and this kind of transformation. Rook d2, queen c3. And ladies and gentlemen, let me say something. Queen c3 is a fatal blunder. It looks like a natural move. You cannot play rook d3 or rook c2 because you will lose your rook over here, but a gorgeous move. Pause the video if you'd like. Try to solve it. I'm going to give you 5, 4, 3, 2, You're right. The move. Knight to d1 quadruple exclamation mark. The threat is not just to take the queen. It's much worse than that. If you take my pawn, the threat is that I've opened up my rooks and queen takes f8 dynamite. King f8, back rank mate. If you go back, I have a choice of whichever rook I want to take with. We got rook e8 in the game, and Daniil just did the simple thing. He took the queen. If you take me, I take you. You cannot take back my knight. I mean, you can if you like getting back rank mated. But if you don't like getting back rank mated, I'm going to move my knight and I'm going to win the endgame. And Magnus Carlsen resigned. And Daniil DUBOV wins. And now it is all square. In stunning fashion, Magnus Carlsen loses back-to-back games. And the score is reset to zeros. And we go to the Blitz. The first game of Blitz, we kick things off. Magnus Carlsen once again has the white pieces, and we go back to something that you may have seen before. Levy, slow down, explain the opening. Well, I mean, it's déjà vu, that's my explanation. But now we get d5 immediately. He does not even play d6. So we get takes, we get h3. Wait, sorry? What about this pawn, Magnus? Magnus got something for us. Queen e1, knight d4, knight takes e5. But look at this, what is... DUBOV coming in here with the horses, getting a little up close. You don't want to get too close to a horse. They smell. King h1. I'm not talking about myself. Bishop takes h3. Wait a second. What? What is this? DUBOV, he could just take that. Yeah, but DUBOV has a plan. Bam, bam. Wait a second. What did I just take that? What if I take that one? Wait. Slow down. Why not take this? Queen d5 check, which would hit the king and the knight. You would guard your knight. You would hit this. So Magnus sees that and sacrifices his rook in the corner, and then plays bishop b2. The knight is trapped. And then plays rook g1. Wait a minute. What's going on here? Wait a minute. Danger levels. They've both seen my danger levels video. Knight is hanging, but so... Wait a minute. What? It's like Swiss cheese right here. That looks nice. Queen f5. Uh-oh. Look at that trick. If you take my queen for free, I take your rook. El tenedor. And then, easy. Knight f8. Knight jumps back to d4. Life is easy. Just trade and knight e6. And Magnus Carlsen wins. He wins the first Blitz game. Melts Daniil DUBOV. Takes a 1-0 lead in the Blitz segment. Now he needs to not lose. And all eyes are on Daniil DUBOV as he is looking to convert a victory to force Armageddon. So we get d4. We get knight f6. We get the usual. Daniil is playing these Catalans. It's a very similar structure as we've already had. Very close structure. He's trying to develop his pieces slowly. The first straight. Knight for bishop. Now, takes the pawn, a4, queen a5. What ends up happening is we get a queenless middle game. This position. Magnus is slightly worse given his passivity. His bishop on c8 is looking terrible. The rook on a8 is drunk asleep in the corner. So we have a5, a6 to stop a6 from white. Rook to d1. So we get bishop back to e7. Bishop h3, the pressure is stockpiling. If bishop takes, rook here, game is over. Knight c8 is a threat, and then I'm going to take your knight. You cannot move your knight because then I take your bishop. Unless knight b6. Magnus Carlsen, you're a wizard. If you take, I take this or your bishop. And if you take me, I just take back, and everything is guarded. But Daniil begins a second wave. Let me bring my rook. Magnus stabilizing, and here Magnus plays g6 and king f8. Where are you going? I've got everything protected. I've got everything protected. The king is coming. Your rook, where's it going? We get this. We get bishop e7, knight a4, king e8, knight b6. And in this position, DUBOV threw in his final trick. He plays the move bishop takes b5. And Magnus Carlsen should have played the move a takes b5. Instead, Magnus Carlsen played the move bishop takes b6. This is hanging and this is hanging, but watch dynamite strike once again. Rook takes b7. A huge miss. A miss of epic proportions. Why is this so drastic? Because after rook b7, bishop c6 is a fork. And what happens is white emerges 2 pawns up. And now let me show you how Magnus reacted to this. He was so close, he had it within his grasp. Magnus Carlsen, this was pure emotion. He was frustrated, to say the least. Frustrated, to say the least, is a bit of an understatement. You thought that was all that was gonna. Oh, but that happened. Yeah, that was definitely the most intense reaction that we've seen. And again, I'm not faulting him whatsoever. It's just, to be honest, these online events actually are amazing to see raw player reactions. Can you imagine in classical chess, you know, Magnus sitting there and just slamming the live board? I mean, obviously you're not gonna get it. That's what the beauty of this online format is. Now, can DUBOV convert this endgame? And the answer is, let's see. So he brings his pawns forward. Now, I'm going to fast forward because this endgame lasted about 60 moves as the players had 10 seconds on the clock with a little bit of bonus time every single move. The big question comes here. After Daniil advances and advances, can he win this endgame? Here's the answer. Opposite colored bishop endgames. It depends how far apart your pawns are. If they're very far apart, you can win because the king and the bishop cannot stop them. The closer they are, if they are separated by 2 files, if there's 2 files separating them or less, one side can hold. Unless there are more pawns on the board. Why? Because watch what happens. I mean, there's a lot of shuffling. I'm going to look away. Oh, this is so interesting. Daniil is slowly advancing. Daniil is trying not to lose on time. A lot of shuffling, little anxious shuffling. He's finally going to push his B pawn. Now, okay, beautiful. Here's our moment. If these pawns did not exist, this is a draw because white cannot make progress because the pawns are too close. Black blocks them. But watch what Daniil does. He realizes, this is the difference. Black is in Zugzwang. He can't move. He either has to move and give me the H-pawn or go back and let me come forward. He uses the H-pawn as the decoy and he comes forward. Magnus is out of moves and the game ends. He promotes, and if bishop here. Endgame lesson. Daniil DUBOV is back. We have an Armageddon. It is 1-1. Magnus, being the higher seed, chooses to play with white. Let me remind you, in the Armageddon, it is 5 minutes for white, 4 minutes for black. There is no bonus time. And if black makes a draw, black is the winner. So here we go. We get a Sicilian defense. We get a Rossalimo. The players trade bishop for knight. Knight f5 is played, d3, knight d2. And what ends up happening from the opening is Magnus Carlsen is ever so slightly better. He's got a better pawn structure. He's got a target on d6 that he can go after. Bishop e6, knight e4. We've got 2 things coming in here. So Daniil says, I don't want it. I don't want you to take it. Let me play d5. But that is a fatal positional mistake. Knight to f6 check, making this trade. Opposite colored bishops, opposite colored bishops. We just had an endgame. But in the middle game, the opposite colored bishops favor the attacking side. Why? Because one bishop can't defend the other. So as long as you're attacking, you have a free attacking piece. And that's exactly what he does. Look at this. He's about to create all sorts of havoc. Daniil Dubov at this point desperately scrambling to protect everything in his... look at this. This is infiltrating. So he plays g5. He's got to push his pawns. But he stabilizes. The magician works his magic again and suddenly is creating play on Magnus. The time is even at this point. The 1 minute, gone. Magnus has no time advantage. The queens come off. So Magnus is up a pawn, but they're doubled. And now Daniil immediately goes to trade off all the queenside pawns. And he's able to do that. He trades as many pawns as possible. This is an equal endgame. Until Daniil makes a blunder and locks his rook on the edge of the board. Now he cannot escape. This is his moment. He could have tried to run away, but he spends a little bit too much time. And Magnus baits a5, and that's it. The rook is stuck. Rook d4 is potentially a try, but bishop f6. And that's it. And Magnus Carlsen now glides forward with his pieces, isolates that rook, still showing his magnificent endgame technique. Rook finally breaks out, but Magnus is coming in, and the pawns are going. They're going up the board, and it was on move 64. Fitting, considering there's 64 squares. Daniil Dubov's chances of advancing in this tournament came to an end. Daniil Dubov losing in the Armageddon match. He was losing on time, but also by position. Listen, I am a fan of Armageddon. We have to figure out how to break ties at some point. I mean, the players can, put on gloves and fight it out, but COVID, so maybe that's in the future. But, oh my goodness, ladies and gentlemen, what an absolute barn burner. And Magnus Carlsen moves on. Daniil Dubov eliminated. And Magnus will face MVL in the semifinals beginning tomorrow. Now, my friends, before we go, I must show you a clip of some of the exit interviews. First, we will begin with the interview of Magnus Carlsen. Now, this one, Magnus was very dejected, by the way. I have to preface this by saying Magnus was extremely upset with his play. He was unhappy. And then he was asked this question, and it led to a very tense and awkward exchange.
In game, Magnus, we've seen a lot of emotion from you today, and you had a big laugh there about something. Could you tell us what that was, and did that sort of put you out of focus to eventually lose that game?
No, that wasn't why I lost.
Can you tell us what it was?
I don't remember.
Okay.
So Magnus is asked about a very painful loss earlier in the day, and obviously, he just says, I don't remember. So that led to a bit of a tense moment. He's quite unhappy, and there was that. And then, obviously, well, why did I put Daniil Dubov calling Magnus Carlsen an idiot on the thumbnail? Well, obviously, it's clickbait, but I was not even joking. This is a clip from the Daniil Dubov interview.
I mean, still, like, when you score points against Magnus, it matters something, yeah? I mean, even both we play like idiots. I mean, he plays like an idiot quite often, but it's not that everybody manages to use it, yeah? So,
Daniil Dubov says, and I quote, "We both played like idiots. Magnus Carlsen plays like an idiot quite often, but not everybody is able to take advantage of it." Wow. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for watching all 28 minutes of this recap. It has been a pleasure making them for you, as always. Semifinals begin tomorrow. Recaps will continue all the way through. And, yeah. Much love. Take care. Hope you enjoy.